expectations that are placed upon us as Black women, it can be very hard and isolating. So I wanted to be able to start a conversation about, okay, why do we say these things? Why do we have these expectations? Why do we put this pressure on us? And why are we viewed differently if you don't have any children?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Four Friends in a Book, our author spotlight. And we are excited, especially me and Kim, because we have an author that we know and love and are so glad to have on today. Would you guys welcome? You can put some clapping hands emojis if you want to chat, the comments in the chat. For Miss Margrett Upshaw. Hello, Margaret.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here.
We're so glad to have you. She is an author now, you guys, and I can't wait to get into the book. I haven't gotten it yet, but I am hands down I want an autographed copy.
Me too.
We both do. But she has an excellent book that we've been hearing about, and we wanted to make sure that we had her on today. So if you have any friends or anybody that you'd like to share this with, please go ahead on mic and share this and let them know that we're on today. And we're talking to Margrett all the way from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, from where the good food is and the good people are. We are so glad to have her on. So, okay, I'm going to go on and get into it. Margrett, your book is entitled Expecting with an Empty Womb. That name right there, when I saw it, I was like, ooh, I got to get that. That sounds like one of those preacher topics where you like, woo, this is going to be fun right here. Expecting with an empty womb. And I just want to ask you, what made you, well, let's just go back to the genesis, the beginning of all of this. What inspired you or made you want to write a book, period, anyway?
The inspiration actually for writing the book and for putting it out there was primarily because I didn't want anybody to go through what I went through feeling alone. I didn't want them to feel the things that I felt, the loneliness, the feeling less than as a woman who is infertile. So the book talks about my struggle, the chronicling of being found out that I was infertile, the processing of all that, the just the devastation from the news that I received, and how, I've just traversed through that whole process, and it's still a journey. But some of the main things that I say when I reason for writing the book again, because I didn't want anybody to feel like it's infertility is not something that is discussed openly. I call it a secret shame. It's definitely not something that we discuss in our culture. But it ironically affects Black women in a very large proportion. And we're not the face of it. Whenever you see anything, materials or marketing about infertility, it's normally, a white woman or white couple. But we make up a very large population of women, or population that has been diagnosed with being inability to conceive. Infertility is defined as inability to conceive after actively trying for 12 months, for a year. And then I think at the age of 35, it's for 6 months. So there are categories. And then there's also secondary infertility, which can also impact women who've had one child, but for whatever reason, they can't have another. Mm-hmm. So I just remember feeling, I felt less than, I felt punished. I was depressed. I felt broken. I didn't feel like I was a woman, because I'm like, okay, God, you said that as a woman, I'm supposed to go forth and multiply. Trying to multiply here, and it's not happening. So, I wanted to be able to provide a source of encouragement, a source of hopefully, strength to women who are going through it, who have gone through it, also to people who have no understanding or idea what it's even about. Because, there are people who don't know. I mean, and it's really about any form of grief. If anybody's ever experienced grief, until you've actually gone through it yourself, you don't really know what to say. You don't really know how to respond. So you get those little cliche terms or phrases that people say all the time, which you're, honestly, in your best effort is trying to be consoling or trying to be supportive, but they really don't necessarily help you. So I talk about some of those things in the book, some of the things that you don't want to say to people who are childless, or who are without child. I don't like the word childless, but who are without child. Because the expectation is that by a certain age, you're supposed to have some children, and people start questioning, you ain't got no kids yet? What you waiting on? Why haven't you had any kids? All those conversations that just come up in general conversations, in general settings. And we are so comfortable questioning people, questioning women on their maternal status.
That's right.
So I talk about all that in the book.
Wow. You got me fully engaged. I'm all in. I'm like,
Right.
It's really
So, Margaret, this is your first book, correct?
Yes.
So you talked about the journey that you went through personally, dealing with the shame and all of that. So the process of writing the book, I'm sure, was very emotional for you or in certain aspects. So what was the process of actually putting the words to paper like for you?
Well, initially, God gave me a title. I was diagnosed in 2012. And so, God gave me a title, I say maybe a year or so after that. And I didn't know what the title was for. I was just, okay. Because as you and Laria know, that I teach Sunday school or Bible study. So I just thought it was a title for a lesson at some point. And so when it was brought to me, told me to write a book, I was like, no, I don't want the world to know what I'm going through. My family did know, my closest friends did know. So in order for me to have to start writing this down, and then, I would write in my journal or write in notes, and it was just for me, it was my personal anguish. It was a way for me to kind of, have a source to get it out with. So that took a period of time. I think I started writing 2000 and writing some notes, maybe 2012, 13, no, 2014. And 2015, I just kept writing, and he kept pressing on my heart to write a book. And so I finished it, sort of put it down, picked it back up, put it down, put it back up. And he just wouldn't let me, because I was thinking, okay, well, if I write it, it's just for me. But now you want me to write it and share it to the world. So that was a whole nother struggle. And I have to tell you, I was disobedient for a good long time because I didn't want to do it. So, but finally, I couldn't rest. I felt so guilty by not being obedient, because it kept coming back to me in different ways. I would see, commercial about a Christian author program, or I would get emails, because I had inquired about just the process of writing. And, had a friend of mine from my hometown has this little writing program and kind of helps you write books or whatever. And so I would see his stuff and I'd be like, So the process for me was it was stop and starting, and I would write notes and I would write it, and I just kind of let it out. And then, I finally felt that I got into a point where I didn't have anything else to say at that time. And so once, I didn't have anything else to add to it. And then in 2000, and it's been maybe 2 years ago, I reached out to a publisher doing self-publishing, a Black young lady who was does self-publishing. And ironically, she shared with me that she was also dealing with infertility, secondary infertility. And so I explained to her what my topic was, and she was like, please let me help you, because it's not only going to help get it out there. It's a much needed conversation, but it's going to help me in the process, because your words were encouraging. So it was just published in January.
Definitely. And with your book title, look, I'm going to say it again for those of you who are just coming in, Expecting with an Empty Womb. I love the title. It's just amazing. And I want to talk about your name. Your name, Maddox Foster, is it Abanon?
O'Banion.
O'Banion. That is your author penman name, your signature name. Now, how did you come up with that?
The names are a combination of my grandmother's and my mother's maiden names.
Okay.
So I wanted to. My mother was born in 1928. My grandmothers were born in the 1900s. So, women who weren't afforded the opportunity to continue their education. My mother had a high school diploma, but she took a couple classes in college, but she couldn't go any further than that. So I said I wanted to honor them because, they pushed me to be where I am. My mother encouraged me to, do a lot of reading and writing. She would write stuff and have, we found notebooks after she passed, spiral notebooks just filled with her writing things.
Wow.
So I wanted to give them voice. I wanted people to speak their names. I wanted them to live on and for people to say these three women who influenced my life so much, who didn't have the access to education, who grew up in segregation, who grew up, in a harsh lifestyle. Their granddaughter, their daughter is able to accomplish something, that they probably never even possibly could dream of. So the name Maddox Foster O'Banion is in honor of them. It's my pseudonym, and I wanted to give them honor. I want them to be spoken about.
Wow.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So you talked about when you were writing the book in the process that it was very personal to you because family didn't know. I'm sure friends didn't know outside of close friends, maybe. So now that the book is out, what feedback have you been getting back from your family that have read it, or friends, or just readers in general? What's some of the feedback that you've gotten back?
Overall, it's been very good. My family it's been a little tough for them because the book is kind of heavy in its topic. It touches on a lot of my anguish, my pain. So they were. I forewarned them. I told them that I was writing and shared with them. So when it was finally published, they were of course the first to read it, and I shared with them that it was going to be some moments that they were not aware of, that they would probably feel a lot of pain. As somebody who's, if you encounter someone, what they're going through, but to have a backstory to that and to be able to kind of visualize that person going through that is hard. So, but overall, the response has been really good. I've been able to meet some of the readers. I've had a couple of book signings, and people have come up to me and shared their story, their journey. Some of the reviews that I've gotten have been, thanks for the encouragement. I did know I have children, but I have friends who are struggling at this point to conceive, and I'm going to share it with them. Some of the terms or the phrases that I use are like, I didn't know that was offensive, but thanks for bringing that to my mind because I would never thought of it. So it's been encouraging. It's daunting, and it's very put yourself in a vulnerable situation to be so personal because I'm very private, and for something like this, for people to know, for the world to know. Again, it's not something that I chose, but I knew that it was something that we need to start a conversation with, particularly again in our culture, because we shy away from the hard conversations this time as a race of people. Black women are often viewed and stigmatized as being hypersexual, as being breeders. We grown up here for slavery, and we were bred, so we don't always get the compassion and the grace that we deserve, particularly from our physicians or your doctors, male doctors, particular white male doctors. They don't view us the same way. And even within our culture, I'll talk about some of those comments that you hear people say that you may have heard even yourself, or the things that, the expectations that are placed upon us as Black women. It can be very hard and isolating. So I wanted to be able to start a conversation about, okay, why do we say these things? Why do we have this expectation? Why do we put this pressure on us? And why are we viewed differently if you don't have any children? Why are we felt, or I can say for myself, I felt, again, broken. I felt tainted. It impacted my dating life. It impacted how I, interacted with some of my friends. You hear about baby showers, wedding invitations. You're going to hear this conversation. Okay, they're going to ask me again. Wait, and that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
it really is. It's very common. We interact in these situations all the time. So I wanted to be able to at least provide a source or some encouragement for those who are going through it, and those who are who may know somebody who's going through it. But I want to also share that the book is not, infertility was my vehicle, but the book is about disappointment and loss, and how you deal with that, and how I use the Word of God as a source of strength for me to get through it. Because I didn't know anybody who was Black who was infertile. I didn't have anybody to refer to. No one. So the only place that I could go to that I knew that had happened was in the Bible. So I referenced Hannah. I referenced, Rachel. I referenced Sarah. I referenced, their struggle with the same thing that I was going with. So I didn't have any other place to go to vent and to find some answers, or some, at least to be able to pray the prayers that they prayed. I can't tell you the number of times I prayed Hannah's prayer. But those things, that was my source. So I offer those same scriptures and those same narratives to women who are going through. And again, I talk about there's a point of the book that's called a chapter called Repurposing Your Pain. And we all deal with it, but how are you going to use this pain? How are you going to allow this pain to be used in a different manner? Are you going to allow it to weigh you down? Because if I'm honest with you, there were moments and times where I'm like questioning, why am I here? Do I remain here, on this side? Because I was just so burdened and overwhelmed with, the hurt and the shame that I felt associated with not being able to give birth.
Wow, that's amazing. So how can viewers who are watching now and people get in touch with you or find your book? Where can they go to order and to get this awesome book?
Thank you. It's on Amazon. You can purchase it there. The book, again, is titled Expecting with an Empty Womb. You can search under the title, or you can search under Maddox Foster or Banyan. If you look under my name, it's not going to come up, Margrett Upshaw. But then you can also email me at mluspeaks@gmail.com to reach out to me, or to schedule bookings, viral discussions, book signings, things of that nature. I'm available. I think it's a much needed conversation.
And before you go, Margrett, if someone's watching this and they have connected with you on this, what's some encouraging words that you can give them as they can walk away from this interview?
That God has a purpose for each of us. That your purpose is not associated with your status. It's not associated with your race, your ethnicity, your economic status. It's found in God. And oftentimes we associate ourselves with what we do, who we are, whether we're married, whether we're single, whether we have children or not. And it's not. God's purpose for each of us is found in Him, and in Him as our source. If you allow the world to dictate, or society to dictate who you are, the same people who gave you your title are going to take it back.
That's right.
Because if you allow them to give you something and it's based upon what they view you as soon as they think that you don't fit the narrative, or you don't fit what they think you are, then they can take it back. But what you have in God, what you have and who He declares you to be, no one can take that from you. And that's what we have to hold on to.
That's right.
That's great. So, Margaret, one, I want to thank you for joining us on Four Friends in the Book Author Spotlight.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, of course, Margaret, we go way back. I mean, she our
Yes,
girl, way back. And
I love
just want to tell the viewers, as Margaret said, it's not just for if you identify with what she went through, but disappointment in general. And that's something we all gone through. So we all should be getting this book and reading it and supporting her on this journey. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today on our Author Spotlight. And remember, let's continue to read, learn, and grow and have a discussion. Thanks for joining us.